we're going to be talking about strategies for supporting children's executive functioning skills and really focusing on our elementary age students. So our goal is to promote the growth of executive functioning skills in our children, and the hope is by the end of today, we'll be able to identify the components of executive functioning, understand the stages of development of executive functioning skills, and then develop at least 3 new strategies to be able to support improving executive functioning skills within your children. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to kind of identify, okay, this is the area where I feel like my child really struggles. These are the skills that I can try and utilize to help them grow. So what are executive functioning skills? They're brain-based pathways that are required to execute and perform tasks. So it's the brain's control system, really. It's that part of our brain that we use to be able to initiate and act on different activities. It allows us to make goals, it allows us to plan, and it allows us to get things done. So it's processes that are require time management, decision-making, and storing information in our memory. So all of those are different components that come together to create these executive functioning, what we call executive functioning skills. So executive functioning deficits can look like diagnoses like ADHD and retention and deficits, distractibility, hyperactivity. So sometimes it's really hard to see what's really going on with my child, what are they struggling with. So hopefully by the end of today, we'll kind of be able to identify, this is what my child complains about, this is what I hear them saying, this must be that area that they could really benefit from some growth in. It might look like our child's struggling with emotional regulation, impulse control, so that ability to just take that pause or manage some really intense feelings. And it can be seen at any age. And honestly, with the pandemic, we're really seeing that our kids are struggling with executive functioning skills, having those skills developed at a much slower pace. So we're seeing that there's definitely been that delay in that. I mean, I think even for us as adults, we're finding that to some extent we're feeling that delay with our executive functioning skills and our ability to really be present and do what we need to do because of the expectations and the requirements that have been placed on all of us. So a lot of times we see that the delays typically will develop around elementary grades as the demands of schoolwork really increase, because as the demands increase, then they start to really feel the struggle of trying to manage, goal plan, put all those things together to really feel like they can be successful. So the impact of executive functioning deficits, it can look like trouble initiating and completing tasks on time. So it might look like they have a really hard time getting home and then starting homework. It might look like difficulty with stopping one task and starting another. So if they get home, they're in the process of doing something they really enjoy, like playing video games. Being able to pause that and do something else might feel difficult. It might look like difficulty retaining information that's required to complete a task. So that step-by-step procedure that's required to complete a task, they might struggle with, what's the next step, what do I need to do next? It might look like they struggle with being able to follow multi-step activities, multi-step tasks, and you need to kind of break it down for them, give them one activity at a time or one piece of the task at a time. It might look like they're disorganized. They come home, they have a very disheveled backpack, everything's coming out of it, they're grabbing their coat and kind of dragging it along with them, so they have a difficult time really kind of managing their things, keeping their things organized and put together. They might struggle to understand the planning that's needed to complete a task. So they might struggle with, what do I need to do to complete this bigger thing? So if the task, for example, is I have to go get my things ready for soccer, right? So they have to pack their bag, make sure they have all those things, make sure that they have their shin guards, their cleats, their soccer balls. So being able to plan all the steps that are required for them to complete a task starts to feel difficult. So what we see in terms of executive functioning skill development is it's slow to fully develop, and we don't really see that it peaks until around age 25. And talking to parents with older children, they're telling me that that age is probably significantly higher right now. And like I said, we're definitely seeing some delays in terms of executive functioning development, especially due to the pandemic. It definitely created a pause for us in a lot of different ways. The part of our brain that we use for a lot of our executive functioning skills is that prefrontal cortex, which also is a part of our brain that doesn't fully develop until middle adulthood, so about that age 25, sometimes a little bit older. So it's important for our children to be provided with strategies to help these skills grow, because it's not something that they're just going to naturally pick up and develop on their own. It's something that they need the tools to be able to do that. So from that 6 to 12 months, they start to attend to things for longer amounts of time. So you start to notice that because they'll have eye contact with you, they'll want to play with an activity or an object a little bit longer. 1 to 2 years, they start to inhibit some reflexive behaviors. And then by 3 to 6 years, we're seeing an increase in impulse control. So they can sometimes tolerate that no a little bit more, but they still really struggle with that. And then by 7 to 9 years, we're seeing things like they're starting to have self-talk. So they're able to start to motivate themselves a little bit more, work through a task, they're able to process information a little bit faster, they're able to keep a little bit more in their working memory as they're trying to work through multi-step tasks. And then 10 to 12 years, that higher elementary age, we're seeing things like, and again, another increase in that impulse control. They're able to attend and concentrate on tasks for a little bit longer. They can start to switch between multiple tasks. They can do one activity and be able to shift to another activity with a little bit more ease. They can learn from their mistakes and create goals to do better the next time. So this is kind of that typical development. So as we go through today, really thinking about, well, where's my child really struggling, and what are some things that I can do to really help support them through developing that part of their executive function. I should have mentioned this at the beginning as well. Please feel free to interrupt, ask any questions. Don't feel like you have to hold on to your questions until the end. All right, so there's 11 sub-skills that are involved in executive function, and we're also going to actually break down metacognition a little bit further, so you'll see that we'll do that towards the end. So we're going to talk about all of these different domains, and after each domain, after we explain it, we're going to talk about some strategies for really helping to develop that domain. So the first one is response inhibition. So response inhibition is our ability to stop an impulse, thought, or action. So it's the ability to have that restraint, to be able to pause before we act on doing something that might not be the best decision or the best choice. So it's that thinking before we act, thinking before we speak. So some examples of having response inhibition would be being able to raise our hand instead of blurting out the answer to a question. That delayed gratification, so being able to pause, knowing that we're going to get a reward for something at the end as opposed to needing it immediately. Being able to wait our turn in line. A lot of kids really struggle with that, right? So being able to wait until it's our turn without feeling that need to push ahead or be first in line. So some strategies for developing that response inhibition. It could be things like using visual cues, such as a stop sign. So giving them that visual to say, hey, just take a pause. And even if they're like, I need to tell you this right now, asking them, hey, take a pause, why don't you write down what you want to say to me? And then I'm going to come right back to you in just a second. So being able to develop these skills is important. For example, if we're on the phone, we're making an important phone call, and they need to talk to us in that moment, that response inhibition gives them the skills to be able to take that pause and recognize, okay, mom's on the phone, I need to wait to be able to tell her what I need to say. I don't know about you, but pandemic, I had a 6 and a 1-year-old at home, so I'd be on really important Zooms and there was no response inhibition. They'd barge right in, didn't care who was there. So that's the ability to take that pause instead of jumping right in and needing that immediate, I need to tell you right now, I need you to fix this right now, I need you to respond to me right now. So some ideas would be modeling response inhibition. So giving them what that looks like. I know you really want to tell me right now, but I need you to take that pause. Sometimes when I really want to do something, I might take a deep breath before I say what I need to say. So giving them some of those strategies, what are things they can do to develop that? Encouraging them to stop and count to 10 before responding. So I know you want to tell me right now, why don't you close your eyes, count to 10, and then I'm going to let you tell me what you need to tell me. So even if you have the availability, using those opportunities when you have the mental capacity and the space to be able to teach the skill can be really valuable. There's some games that require that turn taking, right? So things like Trouble, Chutes and Ladders are really great activities for teaching that response inhibition. When it comes to homework, reviewing the assignment with them and then encouraging them to repeat it back to you. So you know that they understand and you're not just jumping right in. Reading Choose Your Adventure books can be really great ways to develop that response inhibition. Games like Simon Says, so again, it requires them to take that pause and think before they act. Using fidget toys, such as squishy balls, therapy putty, things like that. So if they want to respond to you, you can ask them, just take that pause, why don't you squeeze your stress ball 5 times, and then we can talk about it. So just teaching them little ways of taking that pause, that stop, think before you respond, before you act. The next one is working memory. So we all know about Dory, right? So with working memory, it's that ability to hold information in our memory while we're performing complex tasks. So if we give our child, a 5-step task, they're able to hold that information in their memory to be able to do all those steps. It's the ability to complete multi-step directions. It's the ability to draw on my past, learning to be able to perform tasks that I've already done before. So examples would be remembering a number you were just told, or recalling directions that you were just given, multi-step directions. So some examples of strategies for supporting working memory, things like mental rehearsal. So right when somebody gives us a phone number, even as adults, what do? We quickly say it to ourselves multiple times, trying to make sure that we remember it until we can write it down, until we can type it into our phone. Simplifying the language and directions. So if our multi-step directions, we're using a lot of words, big language, that can be hard for them to catch all of the things that we're saying. So breaking it down a little bit, using simpler language to make sure they understand. Then asking them to repeat the instructions back to us. So if we're asking them for a 3-step task, then asking them to repeat it back to us. All right, darling, what did I just ask you to do? Having them repeat those 3 steps back to me so we know that they comprehend and they understand and they really kind of process what we're saying to them. Playing games like memory and code deciphering activities can be good ways of developing that working memory. Practicing mental math. Using visualization strategies, so linking an image with that next step of what we want them to do so that they start to kind of recognize, okay, when I see this, then it means I do this. Mnemonics or other strategies can help us to remember complex tasks or multi-step sequences as well. The next one is emotion control. And I know this is an area where we're definitely seeing a lot of our kids are really struggling with this, that ability to manage big emotions, knowing how to respond, how to not only respond to the big emotions, but how to tolerate feeling them, right? So it's the ability to regulate and manage strong emotions. It's the ability to calm ourselves when we're feeling that intensity, whether it's feeling excited, angry, or upset. It's the ability to manage our emotions in order to be able to keep moving forward and complete tasks. And it tends to improve and develop with maturity. So examples would be like using coping strategies to calm ourselves down when we're upset, taking a break when I need to. So what you see on the side here, this is the scale of emotional intensity. I absolutely love this. I think it's a really nice visual to help us kind of help our children figure out where is it that I'm at. And with our younger kids, using something a little bit more visually pleasing to them, like the zones of regulation. I know they use the zones of regulation here at Summit as well, so they're hearing that language when it comes to their classrooms and with their teachers. So the idea is to help them kind of connect what they're feeling in their bodies to how they're feeling emotionally. So if I'm feeling great, that green zone, what does that look like? What do I feel like in my body? So that might look like me feeling calm, me being able to sit, me being able to listen to my teacher. I might be feeling happy. Yellow, that's when I might start to feel frustrated or anxious or worried. Red might be angry. And then the blue zone, that might be if I'm feeling sad. So what I like about this scale, which I think can really be helpful, especially with some of our older kids, is helping them kind of rate the intensity of their emotions as they're increasing. So that blue zone is where I'm still feeling in control. I might be starting to feel upset as I get to that 4, but I'm still feeling in control of my emotions. I can respond in ways that are healthy. That yellow zone is where I'm starting to really feel it in my body and helping them understand, well, what happens in my body? It might be us kind of observing them and noticing and saying, hey, I notice when you get more upset, your fists start to clench a little bit, or your eyebrows start to furrow a little bit. So we're starting to pay attention to what are the visual cues that we see in their body that let us know that that intensity is increasing. And then the red zone, that's like what I call the point of no return, right? That's where your intensity is so high, you're feeling so angry. Depending on the kid, that might look like, now I'm so mad, I'm gonna throw stuff, I'm gonna start yelling, I'm gonna start screaming. I have a lot less control over my body. So if we can help them understand what's happening in their bodies as that intensity is increasing, we can try to kind of stop it before it gets to that red zone, or help them develop those skills. And so in the beginning, it very much might be me saying, hey, I noticed that your fists are clenching. And remember, we talked about that being the yellow zone. What are some strategies we can use? So that they can start to kind of be attuned to that too. Because the truth is, we're not always going to be there with them. They might get upset while they're playing a game with their peers. They might be upset during a sport. You know, that feeling of disappointment can very quickly, right? If I feel disappointed or angry about something, that can quickly jump me up to that red zone, especially if I have a really hard time regulating my emotions. So being able to help them understand, okay, these are some of my triggers, this is what's happening, I feel that intensity, these are the skills that I can use. So some strategies, some skills that we can help teach our children, helping them connect what's happening emotionally to their body's reaction, like we said, and then helping them find strategies to help calm them down. So the strategies we use in the yellow zone are going to look really different than the strategies we use in that red zone, right? Because the yellow zone, I'm feeling that intensity, I'm feeling upset, but I haven't reached that point of no return. So things like taking a deep breath, taking a break, walking away, maybe drawing or journaling, depending on your child's interests and what they're going to find to be most valuable, those are things that we can incorporate into that yellow zone, especially with our younger ones. Once we get to that red zone, we're going to want to use strategies that create a lot more intensity. So it might be like, okay, run in place as fast as you can for 30 seconds, or I want you to do 10 jumping jacks. So physical intensity, that's going to help them release some of that emotional intensity that they're feeling inside their body. So once we see them get up to that red zone, we really want to do something that's going to kind of shock their system a little bit, get them out of whatever intensity they're feeling inside their body. It's helpful to come up with a list of their top 5 coping skills, and I would even suggest come up with a yellow zone list and then come up with a red zone list. That way you have their go-to skills, things that they've agreed, okay, sure, I'll try this, and experiment with this. So that list of top 5 doesn't have to be written into stone. You might test the skills and you're like, okay, this one really worked for you. This one not so much. So let's scrap that one and try replacing it with something else. But having a top 5 list is really nice because then even if they're on their own, they try the first one, it doesn't work, they still have 4 other strategies that they've agreed to that they can try. And then practice, 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 practice. If we don't practice the skills when they're with us, then there's no way they're going to be able to utilize the skills when they're not with us. There's some other ideas, so squeezing a stress ball, going outside, getting some fresh air, especially now that the weather's sort of starting to warm up. I know it snows, but you know what I mean. Doing yoga or mindfulness can be really helpful, especially as a protective factor. So in the moment, if I'm in the red zone, I'm not going to say, all right, let's do some yoga. That wouldn't be the time or the space. Remember, those are when we want to use things that are going to create more intensity. Listening to music, getting them out of their head. And music is really great too, because if you think about it, most songs are about 3 to 4 minutes. So if you have their list of songs that are going to get them up and moving, do a dance party. Like, let's play the song that I know they really like, and we're going to get up and we're going to start moving. It's going to create some positive energy. It's going to get some of their energy out. And you know it's 3 to 4 minutes. So it's a short break, a short reset that's going to get them back on track. So here's some ideas. The box breathing. Box breathing can be really helpful because it also creates that visual. So you're going to breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. And you can have them visually move their finger around so that they're creating the box. So then not only are they practicing their breathing, but they have the visual to go along with it. So you're going to breathe in, you're going to hold it, you're going to breathe out, you're going to hold it. Sometimes when I teach the deep breathing too, especially with little ones, having them put their hand on their belly, again, gives them that connection of like feeling the air fill into their belly's gonna rise, and then it's gonna deflate, right? And then as they're breathing out, because we wanna make sure that we're teaching them not to do that chest breathing. That shallow chest breathing actually creates more anxiety, more intensity, doesn't help us to release whatever's happening in our body. So we're gonna breathe in through our nose, and then breathe out through our mouth. And when we breathe out through our mouth, I actually have them make that whooshing sound so that they can physically see the air as it's being released. So breathing in, and then bring it out. So it's a nice way of them connecting. Sometimes with the little ones too, it can be like breathe in the flowers and then blow out the birthday candles. It's just a nice reminder, breathe in with my nose, breathe out with my mouth. Okay, sustained attention. So this is the ability to focus on a particular task or person for a period of time. So being able to stay focused on a conversation that I'm having, right? Being able to keep my attention despite distractions. So being able to sit in a busy, crowded lunchroom and being able to focus on my friend in front of me and have that conversation. Being able to go to a restaurant with my family and focus on what's happening with my family as opposed to what's happening around me. Being in class and being able to focus on the teacher despite whatever distractions are happening in the classroom. That's the idea behind sustained attention. It's also the ability to notice when my attention is being pulled, when it's waning, and the ability to be able to bring my attention back to the task at hand. So this would be maintaining attention in class, or again, like we said, maintaining attention in a crowded lunchroom. So some strategies for supporting with sustained attention. Teaching mindfulness is huge. And mindfulness doesn't have to be this boring meditation of sit there and just be quiet for 30 minutes. Because let's face it, what little kid's gonna do that? Not even a lot of adults can do that. It's really hard to do. So teaching mindfulness can be fun. In my next slide, I'll show you some places where you can look to find some of those mindfulness activities. Brain breaks. So if you're noticing that they're feeling really frustrated with homework, right? Let's think about it. So they've just had a full day of school where they're required to try to have sustained attention and focus on what they're doing. If they have after-school activities, now they've had that sustained attention to whatever those activities are, and now they're exhausted. The truth is that our sustained attention, our ability to focus, kind of wanes throughout the day. We're sharpest at our best in the morning, and as the day progresses, it becomes a little bit more challenging to really stay focused. So if we're noticing that they're really struggling, giving them those brain breaks, those pauses. Because if we try to push through when they're frustrated, if we think about that frustration going back to that scale of emotional intensity, if they're frustrated, they're getting angry during homework, we can figure they're probably at least in the yellow zone, if not nearing towards the red zone. And if we require them to push through, you can't stop, you gotta keep going, they're just getting more and more elevated. So taking that pause, let's walk away from it. Like we said, some of those activities, those coping strategies we had talked about, let's get up and dance or move around for 3 minutes and then come back to it. That brain break just kind of re-energizes them, resets them, and allows them to be able to come back and do what they were doing. Encouraging them to maintain eye contact during a conversation. If they're staring at their Nintendo Switch while we're trying to talk to them, they are not hearing us at all. So asking them to look at you before you give them that direction, before you give them that task is really important to make sure that they actually understand what we're trying to say. Games like Simon Says, Memory, I Spy, Keep the Story Going, those are all great games to help encourage that sustained attention. And then providing them opportunities to focus on one task. So saying, okay, let's sit down and play this game together, or let's sit down and do this puzzle together. Things that are going to require them to try to sit and focus on one task for a prolonged period of time. And that doesn't have to be things that are not fun. Maybe you guys play a video game together, and like, okay, we're going to play Donkey Kong together, and we're going to finish this level, or we're going to finish this round. So trying to teach that sustained attention can also be doing things that are fun and exciting, just trying to keep them focused on one task for a longer period of time. So we mentioned mindfulness. Mindfulness has a lot of value and a lot of benefits for our youth, and teaching them when they're young. It gives them that ability. So the idea of mindfulness is being able to pay attention on purpose in the present moment. So teaching them mindfulness activities at a young age helps them to be able to have those skills as they age. So things like Cosmic Kids Yoga, GoNoodle.com, GoZen Online, if you just search it on YouTube, has some awesome activities. The 478 breathing is one of the GoZen Online videos that they have. They make them fun, they're cartoons, they're engaging, and they're going to teach them different skills. These can be great for those brain breaks as well. So if you're noticing that they're getting frustrated, you want to give them that pause. These are activities that can be really helpful, and I would suggest do it with them, because then it becomes more fun, more interactive. And the idea is we want our kids to know that it's not a them thing, right? So if we're sitting with them as they're doing their homework and they're getting frustrated, I know that I start to get frustrated. And I have to kind of take that pause and say, okay, where is my frustration coming from? I don't want to put that onto my child because they're going to feed off of my energy. So being able to take that brain break and then doing the activity together helps to reset both of us. And again, we're modeling beautifully that ability to, hey, we all need a break, we all need a pause, let's do this activity together. And some of them are fun, you get up, you get some movement. Some of them are teaching breathing, so they're a little bit more quiet, and we can kind of gauge what do we need to do right now, what are we noticing from our child. Some other ideas are mindful walk. So this is something we can do outside. And the idea is instead of just being on the walk or getting distracted or putting on our headphones, we're going to do it mindfully by noticing the different colors that we see. Or maybe we tap into our senses. Our senses are one of the most powerful ways to really connect to our present moment because it's really focused on what's happening in the here and now. So a mindful walk where we tap into our senses might be like asking my child, tell me, what are some things that you see? What are some things that you can hear? What can we touch? Maybe you touch a pretty leaf, right? What can we smell as we're going on our walk? Now, I wouldn't encourage them to taste anything out there unless you brought us in. But really tapping into their senses, what are those things that they can really connect to in their environment? Drinking water can be a really nice activity because it gives you that pause. So instead of in the moment feeling that intensity, taking that sip of water and just allowing ourselves to just take that pause. I think that's a really great one for adults too. So if I notice myself getting frustrated, I'm just gonna take that pause, take a sip of water, close my eyes, do some of my positive self-talk to get me back on track, and then re-engage with whatever's happening with my child. Visualize black is a really simple one. So if they're getting frustrated, it could be a nice little quick activity that they can do. Just have them close their eyes, and then they're gonna use their hands and they're gonna cover their eyes. And then just take a few deep breaths and focus on the black. So it's removing all of the stimulation around me. It's removing all of that intensity that I see and really just trying to help me focus on what's happening right now. Removing everything around me and then bringing myself and my attention back. 5-finger relaxation. So you touch your thumb to different fingers and you're gonna focus on different visualization. So as I touch my thumb to my index finger, I might think about my favorite food and really try to get into it with my senses. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? When do we have it? Is it a special holiday meal? Then I might touch my thumb to my middle finger and I might think about a warm embrace. So a hug with a friend or a family member, or petting my dog, my pet, right? Then I'm gonna touch my thumb to my ring finger and I might think about physical activity. So what does my body feel when I'm feeling really energized for physical activity? I might have just gone for a run or just finished playing a sport. And then the last one, touch my thumb to my pinky and I'm gonna think about my favorite place. So getting really engrossed in my favorite place. What does it look like? What does it smell like? When do we go there? Maybe it's a place they made up in their imagination, and that's okay too. It can be their favorite beautiful place that they've ever been. If they haven't been there, or even if they have, as they're talking about that visualization, their special place, maybe make it activity, and then you guys draw it together, and then you can see their visual. What does this place look like? If it's a place you've really been, maybe you have a picture of it, and you can use that picture to help them connect with that special place. Body scan and progressive relaxation are similar in that they both kind of focus on helping me understand what's happening in my body. So with the body scan, you're kind of going through your different body parts and just noticing what's happening. Am I feeling uncomfortable? Am I feeling any tension in my body? That one can sometimes be a little bit more difficult with some of our younger ones. With the progressive relaxation, with our older ones, we might try to tense and relax each different body part, but with my little ones, I'm having them tense their entire body. So I'm like, scrunch up your body as tight as you can. They're gonna scrunch up their little faces and their fists and get their body as tight as they can, and then relax and release all of that tension. That progressive relaxation, what it does is it creates that messaging to my brain. This is what I feel like when I'm tense, and this is what I feel like when I'm relaxed. And we're ending with that relaxation, so it really helps them to just calm and relax their whole bodies. And again, that can be something quick. You just squeeze our bodies, do it a few times to take that pause, take that break while they're in the middle of a frustrating homework assignment or doing a task that they really don't like, they're doing a chore, or maybe you're doing a family event that they don't really want to they're giving you a hard time, tense, relax their bodies, do it a few times to help them kind of really feel that relaxation, and then reset and come back to what we're doing. Take 5, grounding exercise. Again, taps into our senses. So same as kind of what we're talking about with the mindful walk, but you don't have to be on the walk. So we'll do a take 5 right now. All right, so if my son's getting frustrated, I might be like, Lukey, look around you. Name 5 things that you can see. Name 4 things that you can hear, 4 things you can touch. So I'll have him actually touch things around him. 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And I might have like a piece of a Hershey's Kiss or a bottle of water or a juice or something right next to him so that I can make sure we're tapping into that taste as well. I've done this with him even when he's like really nearing that red zone. You know, my 8-year-old can really show a lot of intensity if he's really upset about a homework assignment. So as we're nearing that red zone, I'm like, Lukey, take 5. Show me 5 things you can, tell me 5 things you can see. And we just kind of use it as a quick reset. Another nice grounding exercise that's linked to that is observe and describe. So for example, he's in the middle of really feeling that intensity. I notice it's really rising, and I might look at him and say, hey, can you describe for me that painting behind you right there? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, just tell me, what do you see over there? And as you can see, that painting behind you guys is pretty intricate. So he might say, well, I don't know, it's brown. I'm like, okay, give me more. Well, it has a guy on it, and he's got a long beard, and there's the telescope and this other weird round object, and he'll start to describe it with as much detail as he can. And then I ask him at the end, I'm like, all right, what were you thinking about when you were telling me about that poster, or that picture? And he'll be like, the picture. So it's a really nice, quick way of getting them out of whatever's happening in their head, bringing them back to the present moment, bringing them back to what we're doing right now. So hopefully we can take some skills from here that might feel helpful. All right, task initiation is the next one. So this is the act of beginning a task independently, so being able to start doing their homework on their own, without procrastination, without reminders. I know, that's a tough task for our little ones. So in the beginning, we're teaching it, right? So if we have to give reminders, that's okay. We're encouraging the skill, we're encouraging the activity. So the example would be starting to work on a big project on their own. I don't know if you guys have to do the science fair here. We just finished our big science fair. So it's this big task that we have too much to do, but we can't wait till the last week, right? So it's how do we break down, what do we need to make sure we're doing step by step to make sure that we have time to complete this big project. Starting to clean our room, right? So it's a big task. How do we make sure that we start it and then complete the task? So strategies for initiation, the rocket ship countdown, count backwards from 5, and then we're going to jump into the next activity. So it's all right, okay, we're going to start our homework in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we'll jump into it. So we're giving them that quick little reminder. This is our next activity, we're going to do it in 5. You can use a timer, an actual physical timer that beeps. We use our Alexa for that a lot, right? Alexa, give me a 30-second timer, and then the beep goes off, and he knows, all right, it's time to transition to that next thing. So sometimes they need that reminder. And I like using the timers because then it's not as much me, like, okay, Lucas, it's time to go. It's more like, all right, you have 30 seconds, here's the timer. When the timer goes off, it's time to transition. So we're trying to teach them that independence. Let's face it, especially in the beginning, it might take 3 or 4 timers to get them there, but the idea that we're trying to teach the skill. Allowing them to choose which task they want to start with, so giving them that autonomy or control can really help them to be encouraged to want to do that next activity. Also, like we mentioned before, in the beginning of the day, our ability to really focus, sustain attention, be able to have the motivation and the energy to do difficult things is going to be a lot higher than towards the end of the day. As the day progresses, it becomes much more difficult to do that. So even as we're asking them to choose, kind of recognizing that maybe towards the end of the day, they're going to have a harder time doing harder things. So how do we space it out in a way where we're trying to have them do the things that we know they're going to really struggle with first, so that they can end with the things that they really enjoy. And sometimes even saying it to them like that. Like, I know you really don't want to do your English homework, but wouldn't it be cool to end with our math homework because it's so easy for you? And you really enjoy it, and it's going to be so much fun to do. So trying to help them kind of gauge for themselves. This is what I enjoy, this is what I don't. What will it look like to order it in that way? Break up large tasks into smaller pieces. So I don't know about you, but if I tell my kid, go clean your room, he's gonna be like, no. But if we break it down, like, okay, I need you to pick up your clothes and put them in the hamper. And then they do that task. All right, I need you to make your bed. So as we're teaching the skills, we kind of need to break it down into bite-sized pieces so that they know exactly what we need from them and they can initiate that smaller task first to help get them to that bigger task. Reinforcing their efforts, right? So little ones love rewards, and the rewards don't have to be big things. They don't even have to be monetary. So what are some things that are really reinforcing for your child? And how can we set it up in a way where they know if I do these harder things, I'm going to get to do these funner things, and what might that look like for them? Providing adult assistance the first time they're doing a new task or doing something harder to make sure that they know. Sometimes that task initiation is hard because they're uncertain or insecure or unsure of what they're doing. Their confidence isn't where it needs to be. So that idea of jumping in and doing something that they don't know what it is feels really scary. So maybe it's we help them with it the first time, the second time. Maybe it's we help them with it to the point where we know that they can do it, and then we say, okay, I think you brought it from here. And then we start to slowly pull back so that they feel that confidence. Like, I trust you, I know you can do it. Now it's time for you to kind of take control. Make it a competition. So if it's something that you need them to do, maybe it's like, okay, let's see who can get dressed the fastest. If they're having a hard time initiating getting ready in the morning, it's like, let's have a competition. Who can get dressed the fastest? Me or you? Who can brush their teeth first? Me or you? So making it something where it becomes a little bit more of a game, more engaging to try to get them motivated to want to start the task. Creating a daily schedule with responsibilities, especially with the little ones, having it be visual can be really helpful. So what are the pictures? Okay, when you come home from school, X, Y, and Z, these are the things you need to do. So maybe it's a visual of where do they need to put their bag? Where do they sit down to do their homework? So they kind of have that step-by-step of what's really expected of them, what does it look like so that they can start to get more autonomy. If it's possible to do that on like some sort of dry erase board, something where they can physically check off the tasks, kids love to be able to check things off as they complete them. So having their checklist of here's the top things that you need to do when you get home, they're checking them off as they do it, and then we can erase it and start fresh the next day. Planning. So this is the ability to prioritize and build a roadmap to accomplish a goal. So it might be developing a well-thought-out strategy before starting a task, and then being able to manage current and future goals. So if I have multiple goals at the same time, how do I prioritize? What does that look like? And then the ability to prepare for a future task. Even, like I said, a simple task of, I need to make sure I have all my stuff for soccer practice after school today. How do I make sure that I have everything packed that I need? Or I know that I need to bring my violin to school today because I have orchestra. How do I make sure that I'm planning everything I need for the day? Some strategies for planning. Setting a plan for the day so they know what to expect. And that way they can start to kind of plan for themselves. These are the things that I need for all of the things that I have to do today. And then kind of giving them that reminder, okay, did you pack everything that you need for school? What might that be? It might be homework, it might be your lunch. It might be your library books if it's library today. So making sure that they have all the things that they need. And again, in the beginning, we're going to give them more reminders because we're teaching the skills. And the goal is that as they become better at the skills, they're going to have a lot more independence. Support them in prioritizing and creating their own schedule. So what are some things? Planning in the breaks, because then they feel like, okay, it's not just all the things I don't want to do. There's fun things in here too. So have them plan in video game time if that's what they want to add. Have them plan in time to go outside and play so that they can see, okay, my schedule has fun things too, and this is what it looks like. Breaking a task down into smaller pieces can really help them to accomplish what they need to and helps them to kind of figure out what needs to be done first, right? So if I'm making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and I put the 2 slices of toast together before I put the peanut butter and jelly inside, I haven't accomplished my goal. So some tasks require a first then approach, so being able to help them figure out what are the steps that I need to do, how do I make sure I'm doing them one at a time, and then coming back to it at the end and saying, okay, so my goal was this, how did I do? What are the steps that needed to be done? How many of them did I do? How successful were we? One fun one is having them plan a day trip. So plan an activity that you can do together. It could be something as simple as, let's plan a picnic to the park, right? And then have them really work with you on figuring out what are the things that I need to do for us to do this activity. So we need to pack our lunch. What are we going to bring? What utensils or plates do we need to take with us? Do we need to make sure to bring napkins? Where are we going to sit? Is there a blanket that we're going to sit on the floor? Is there a park bench, like a table that we're going to sit on? Do we need to bring a tablecloth? What are the things that we need? What are we going to play when we get there? Do we need to bring any activities with us, like a soccer ball? So maybe in the beginning asking them, okay, what's our goal? What do we want to accomplish? And then having them really take a proactive approach in what are the steps that I need to be able to do that. Another simpler one, planning a meal together. What do they want to make? And have them participate in it. Kids love to be able to participate in that cooking process, being able to mix with you or pour the ingredients in, and then at the end, they get really proud of the fact that they've just accomplished this, right? So look what I made for dinner today, and they feel really proud of them. So it's a joint activity, we can do it together. It gives them some autonomy, but it also helps with that planning, because we have to think about what are the ingredients, and not just the ingredients, but what's the order, right? Like we said, we can't put 2 slices of toast together before putting the stuff inside the sandwich, or we won't accomplish our goals. So they have to really work at what are the steps, what are the things that I need, and what's the order of doing that. Developing SMART goals. So if there's something that they really want to work towards, helping them kind of figure out step by step. What's your goal? Is it specific enough that we know when we've met the goal? Is it measurable? How will we know when we met the goal? Is it achievable? Is it a goal that's realistic for them at their age and with the resources they have? Is it relevant? If it's not relevant, if it doesn't matter to them, they're not going to care about the goal, so it won't be motivating enough. And then time bound. Especially as we're teaching this planning, things that they can do quickly are really important so that they can feel that success and want to keep moving forward. All right, organization kind of goes along with planning. It's that ability to keep track of our materials. It's the ability to keep track of the information in our heads. Developing a system of keeping track of information and keeping track of my things. So examples of that would be remembering which books to bring home, remembering to bring my library books back to school on library day, knowing my schedule and what I need for the day, being able to gather all of my things for football practice or soccer practice for the day. So strategies, developing morning and evening routines. Again, especially with our little ones, having those be visual can be really helpful. Encouraging them to be part of that unpacking process of their backpacks. So instead of us taking out the mess and cleaning it up for them, encouraging them to be part of that process really teaches that organization. Where's their folder for their homework? Where's their folder for the papers they're bringing home? Encouraging them to take those papers out. Where are we going to put them? What are we keeping? What are we not? Where does it go? Having them have organized space at home. So for example, space where I put my things, space where I do my homework, helps them to keep that organization because they know what to expect. Where's the spot where I keep my sports materials? Where's the spot where I keep my instruments? So they have that idea of this is where it belongs. And then when you ask them to put away their things, they know where that put away is instead of it just being on the floor. So it gives them a little bit more direction with what does organization look like for me. Weekly backpack dumps, clean outs at the end of the week, making sure that if there's a sandwich stuffed at the bottom of their backpack that was found it and pulled it out, and encouraging them again. Have them be part of that. They're never too young to help you clean out their backpack and show you what's in there that they want to keep, what's in there that we don't need to keep, what does it all mean. Using checklists and planners, even the little ones can start to kind of use a planner to figure out do they need for homework, what are the things that they need for practice. My son just started lacrosse. Oh my gosh, the number of things that we need. So encouraging him to be responsible for that. Do you have your shoulder pads? Do you have your arm pads, whatever they're called? I'm still learning all these things. But making sure that they know what's your checklist of things, making sure that he knows what to bring with him, and giving him some responsibility and autonomy. There's a couple times where he forgot his belt for karate. I'm like, whose responsibility is it to make sure you have your belt in your hand? And putting that responsibility back on him. He's 8 years old, but he can have that responsibility. So if we automatically take on that responsibility for them, they're never going to feel the need to learn that organization or that planning, because they're going to feel like, well, mom or dad, they're just going to do it for me, so I don't really need to develop that skill. Time management. So if this is using time efficiently to be able to accomplish a task, it might be the capacity to estimate how long something takes, making sure that I have enough time to do it, planning all the steps that I need, and making sure that I'm on task, on time. So if I'm taking a math test and there's 20 questions on the math test, making sure that I'm pacing myself so that I make it to the end of the test. So pacing myself, allotting enough time to complete my homework at the end of the day. So strategies for time management, again, having that daily schedule, breaking assignments down into smaller chunks, giving time warning. So again, letting them know, okay, we need to finish this activity at this much time. How much time do you think you're going to need? It needs to be done by 6 o'clock. How much time do you think you're going to need for this activity? And having them experiment with that. Sometimes they're going to be right, sometimes they're not, but I'm going to teach them that time. So if they can maybe 10 minutes to do it, and I'm not going to it's not bad. Let them come. You don't have to working that interval time. So if they tell you, I think that's 20 minutes, maybe we're going to add an extra 5 and say, okay, well, instead of 20, let's make it 25. I want to make sure that you're able to take that time to me. So we're teaching them the importance of being able to do that, which I think is such an important skill even for us as adults. I know if I'm at work and I'm trying to finish this big project and I don't have time for a break, by the end of it, I'm so drained, right? And I notice that my productivity starts to decrease towards the end of the time that I'm spending doing it. Our brain is really geared at being able to fully focus on a task for maybe 40 minutes, even as adults. So not taking that pause in between, our productivity is going to start to decrease. So teaching them that skill of it's okay to incorporate breaks, it's fun, it helps give us that reset and gets us back on track. Games like Pictionary or doing puzzles can be really helpful for teaching and learning as well. Oh, the non-preferred tasks. So if they're in the process of doing something that they really enjoy and they have to do their homework, again, giving them that time warning. Okay, 5 more minutes, and then we're going to need to do this activity. And if we know that they need that extra motivation, it might be, okay, and then after you finish this activity, then they know that, okay, we're going to do this. So it's combined with something that they're really going to prefer, something that they're really going to enjoy. So we're giving them that motivation. Okay, goal-directed persistence. This is our ability to be able to set reachable goals, display ongoing efforts towards meeting those goals, and then motivation to keep going. So even when things get hard, I'm going to push through and make sure that I keep working on it. So it's the ability to stick to a task and not give up even when you're going into it. Some examples of this for older kids, but saving money for a car, or saving money for their favorite toy. If they want to get a new video game, saving money to make sure that they can use that, or completing chores to get a reward. So if they get a weekly allowance, they have to complete these chores to get that allowance, right? So some strategies for developing goal-directed persistence. So again, those SMART goals. And as parents, a lot of times we want to just be able to solve their problems for them, jump right in, and we don't want our kids to suffer. We don't want them to experience pain or disappointment, so we tend to jump in and fix it for them. But when we do that, we're taking away that ability for them to develop these skills. So teach them problem-solving skills instead of solving it for them. What does that look like? You're having this problem with your friend. All right, what can we do? You're having this problem at school. Let's talk about it. How can we solve this? You're having a problem with your friends at soccer. Let's figure out how can we work through the steps that you need to take to be able to support how you're feeling with this and to make sure that you have a good plan for how you're going to respond. Teaching them and modeling positive self-talk. I mentioned that before. I tend to use self-talk. I say it out loud because I want my kids to hear me and I want them to know that it's okay to be able to do that. We tend to motivate ourselves more than anybody else can, right? So if I'm at work and I'm working on this difficult project and I'm feeling really stuck, I have to give myself a pep talk, right? Can't wait for my boss to come in and say, it's okay, Susie, you got this, just keep going. They don't have time for that. So I have to motivate myself, and there's the expectation that if I don't do it, then I'm not being successful at my job. So I have that motivation of wanting to be successful. But if I don't push myself, I won't get there. And so same for our kids, especially at this age, they're gonna wanna give up. If this homework feels hard, I don't wanna do it. If soccer feels hard, I'm done. I don't wanna do it anymore. So teaching them that ability to motivate take all that positive language that you're saying to them and being able to say it to themselves is something they can take with them wherever they go. So even if we're not with them, they still have that positive voice in their heads that they can use to really help motivate themselves. And that helps us to build confidence. Confidence is what gives us the motivation and the energy to keep persisting, to keep going. So if we're able to let them know, hey, I believe in you, I'm telling you these words, I want you to be able to say it to yourself. What's our mantra? You know, coming up with your own little mantra, what's it gonna be? How are you gonna motivate yourself when it feels really hard? So for example, we have this big math test and they're really nervous about it. And we can kind of walk them through what are the things you're gonna do if you get stuck? What are the strategies you're gonna use? What are you gonna say to yourself if it feels really hard? Reminding our kids that they've done hard things, right? All of our kids have done hard things and they've done them successfully. In our minds, we tend to get fixated and stuck on the times where we can't successfully do those hard things. But the truth is, we tend to complete hard things a lot more often than we don't. So teaching them and reminding them, hey, you did these hard things and you did them so well. How can you motivate yourself to keep going? Games like puzzles and word searches can be helpful for this. And then helping them come up with a plan to save up for something that they really want. Making it attainable, so starting with something small. What might that look like? Maybe something that they can accomplish in a week, right? What are the steps that they need to do? What do they need to make sure that they do to obtain that goal? And when they get frustrated midway through, you know, how do we help them have that positive self-talk to keep going, reminding them of what their goal is and what the reward will be at the end if they accomplish that goal. And we mentioned problem solving, so this is a nice little acronym for a problem-solving framework, just PLAN. So problem description. If we don't know what the problem is, then it's harder for us to come up with the solution. List goals, options, and the pros and cons. So if we do that from the beginning, all of the different options, then if we get stuck where we work through the whole plan and we pick something and it doesn't work, we don't have to start from scratch, right? And the pros and cons lists help us to be able to rule out which of these options is going to be the best option. At this stage, there's no right or wrong answer. We want them to list out all of their options. So even if it seems absolutely ridiculous to us as adults, let them write it down because then we're going to encourage them to do their pros and cons. This teaches them that skill as opposed to us just solving it for them. Action plan. So once we pick which option we're going to do, we're going to list out the steps that we need to do to complete that. And we're going to also already anticipate and think about what are some possible obstacles and how I'm going to manage them if they do arise. And then lastly, once I finish, I'm going to notice my successes. That goes back to that building confidence. If I feel like I can be successful, I'm going to have the motivation to try again and do harder things. So starting with, ending with that noticing successes, letting them know how proud we are, how much we see, how much they've accomplished. That reinforces that we think that they can do it, and it starts to connect for them internally that they think that they can do it. And as we're teaching them, start with a simple example. We're not going to start with a really difficult problem that feels hard to solve. Start with something small that we know that they can accomplish so that they can feel that sense of success, start to build their confidence, and then work up to harder problems. All right, flexibility and shifting. So this is having that mental flexibility. It's our ability to be able to revise our plans in the face of obstacles, setbacks, or new information, or if we make a mistake, we're able to kind of reset and try a new option off of our problem-solving plan. The ability to adapt to different demands, so being able to manage multiple things at once. The ability to transition from a preferred to a non-preferred activity, so going from playing our video games to doing homework. And then tolerating when something doesn't go our way. That's a big part of that flexibility and shifting. And that can be really hard for our little ones, right? So they're playing a board game and they lose and it's the end of the world. So that flexibility and shifting is being able to tolerate. Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, and it's okay. I'm still learning through that process. So an example would be doing something you didn't choose when it's not your turn to pick. So, you know, if it's family movie night, and it's their siblings' turn to pick, being able to tolerate not making that choice. Or if they have a play date and they really want to play outside, but their friend wants to play a board game, being able to tolerate that decision. And this is such an important skill for social skills, right? For socializing. Because if I can't tolerate when somebody else wants to do something different, I'm going to start to pull myself away, or the other kids are going to pull themselves away. So being able to have that ability to tolerate not always being the one to choose, it's going to help me with my socialization. Turning off video games in order to do homework is another really big one. So some strategies, again, coming up with the schedule, coming up with the plan, but also talking to them about when there's going to be changes to the schedule, helping to prepare them for them. We want them to be able to be flexible, but in the beginning, as we're teaching it to them, we want them to have that expectation. And sometimes I would even say, if you can, if your schedule allows for it, create that change in schedule to help them tolerate it, right? So create a little shift. We're going to grandma's house, but first we have to stop at the store and pick up X, Y, and Z. We know they don't want to go to the store, but we're developing that flexibility, that ability to be able to shift and do things that I don't prefer before I get to do the thing that I really want to do. Again, providing warnings when there's going to be a transition. We talked about creating schedules. Visual schedules can be really helpful, especially with our little ones. Discuss and practice strategies to cope with frustration, especially with their peers. We want them to be able to tolerate when they're frustrated, when they're feeling disappointed, especially if it's not because they've been wrong, right? It's your friends wanted to play soccer today, but you really wanted to play baseball. And I know that was really frustrating that you couldn't play baseball at recess today. And how do we make sure that we're able to tolerate that frustration while also being able to advocate for ourselves so that there's that give and take. So we can't always play soccer, we can't always play baseball. How do we find that balance, and what does that look like? Playing games like Keep the Story Going, role-playing, musical chairs. Role-playing can be a nice one for helping with problem-solving skills too, because as we're kind of coming up with our options, creating our action plan, you can even make it fun with creating those obstacles. So if you're role-playing a conversation they're going to have with their friend, we might get funny and silly and make up obstacles that might not really exist just to kind of make it more humorous, but also help them kind of use that part of their brain to think about, okay, well, if that does happen, how will I handle it? How will I respond? What will it look like? Please.
Yeah. So I understand the making schedule can help them follow through the whole day. The thing is, how do you encourage self-motivations to really follow through? So the plan can look beautiful, and then you guys discuss, okay, here's your plan. You left home, come back, and it's complete, like 20% get it done, right? So how will you be able to encourage them to follow through and to make it really a successful plan?
Absolutely. So I think starting with plans that feel attainable, so age appropriate, making sure that it's something that you know that they can accomplish. So if we're noticing that there's a lot of lack of success, then maybe I'm starting with a goal that's too big, and maybe I need to break it down a little bit. So if I'm giving you a 5-step task, like this is what I want you to complete before I get home, and I come home and they're stuck on step 2, then it's like, okay, all right, I want you to feel successful. I want you to see what that feels like in your body. We get proud of ourselves when we accomplish, right? So I might break it down and say, okay, this time I want you to do these 2 tasks. This is what I need you to do by the time I get home. See them be successful with that, and then extend it and extend it and extend it. So we're seeing that they're seeing that success, they're building that confidence. Sometimes we need to create that external motivation to help teach that internal motivation. So it might be, in addition to breaking down the task, it might be that I need to create something more external. What's the reinforcement? What's the reward that they're going to get for being able to complete this task? To try to teach more of that internal, intrinsic motivation that we develop. So they might not have that in the beginning, or it might be back to that relevant. Is it important to them? Do they care if this gets done? If they don't care that it gets done, how can I create that external motivation to make it matter a little bit more? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I think public checking, like not limited to the other day, but checking in between, maybe I can make a phone call or something to kind of monitor so they know somebody actually cares.
Yeah, right, absolutely. So it's that accountability too, of letting them know, hey, I'm here, I'm paying attention, I'm really caring about this to help it to them. Absolutely.
And I think that also you mentioned about the transitioning the task, right? Sometimes I feel it's not very easy, especially if they are doing something fun or they are more into it.
Absolutely.
Compare with something, the task they practice piano, for example. So how do you actually prepare them, or they feel more responsible for like switch switch to the test, they might not feel so into it?
Sure. I think it's something that definitely takes a lot of time. I mentioned the pandemic and the impact that it's had on our kids. So I've disclosed to my children do karate, and we have to get ready for karate midway through the evening when they're done with homework and now they're getting ready, they're playing video games or they're on their iPads because they've earned that technology time. And even though they both love karate, transitioning from this one thing to this other thing that they know is going to be fun, but it requires them to get up and get dressed, is really hard to do. So it's a work in progress. I think we went from a time where they didn't have to do a lot of, for a long time it was hard for me to get my son out of pajama pants, right? Because he was so used to I get on the screen, I wear pajama pants, I just changed my shirt, and now I have to wear real pants. So the little things that they kind of became adapted to during that time, we're still kind of reeling from them in terms of helping them transition back out of that. So some of the things we talked about setting that timer, setting that expectation, creating, so if they are doing piano practice and it's not a preferred activity, what's a preferred activity that we can link to it? So after you play the piano, you're going to get to do this. So it creates that motivation of first this, then that. So for even if it's something that you know they're going to prefer, we have to kind of set it up for them, giving them that time and that expectation. Okay, you have 15 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Okay, time's off. It's time to turn it off. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult where I have to physically turn things off to kind of give that reset, but giving them those reminders because we know that the end goal is something that they're going to enjoy. You just kind of have to teach them to get to that point on their own. And it takes time. It's not an easy thing. There's no quick fix button of do this and then voila, they're going to be great at it. It's something that's going to take a little preparation.
And do you have the experience that you ask kids to make your plan but they were but I don't know, I cannot predict the time it's how long will it take you to finish your math homework? How long will it finish you will be able to finish reading this chapter? And I think especially for kids, they were I don't know. So
Yeah.
when you say can you make a plan suddenly okay, we don't have anything, do you have something important? But for this it's very dramatic.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes I've made it into a game. So he doesn't know how long his math homework. The truth is, I don't know how long his math homework is going to take. Sometimes he's motivated, sometimes he's not. So we make it into a game. It's okay, well, so if he gets frustrated, he's I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm well, I think it's going to take you 15 minutes. And I always estimate way more than I think it's going to take him because I want him to feel that success. And then I set a timer. I'm okay, we're going to put a timer on. I think it's going to take us 15 minutes to finish your math homework. And then when he finishes in 10, he's I beat the timer. That was really cool. And so we're developing that confidence. So sometimes if you feel that frustration, we're not going to push it. We're just going to come up with some arbitrary number that's much higher than what we think. And I've been wrong sometimes where I predict a ridiculous number and he doesn't beat it. And I'm well, that's okay. We're going to feel disappointment sometimes. We're going to try again. So it looks like we finished half of it in that much time. So now we have half left. And I bet this last half's going to take us this long. And we try to create that reset. We're teaching them to tolerate frustration and disappointment, so we're still teaching an important skill. And then we're creating them we're giving them that flexibility, that ability to shift and say, I'm feeling disappointed, but I'm gonna keep going. And what does that look like? So we'll take a break and then we'll come back to it and set another timer. So sometimes we have to shift and adapt to get them to that place where they're gonna hear what we need them to, what we need them to hear from us, right? And I know we're going over on time, so just real quickly, so metacognition is that ability, and what I'll make sure to do as well, actually, is I'm going to make sure that Doreen has a copy of my PowerPoint, so that you guys have that with the video. You can look back at it, because I want to be really mindful of everyone's time. But metacognition is our ability to think about our thinking. So being able to process when things go well, when they don't go well, understand why we do what we do. I've noticed third grade math is very different than when I was in third grade, and I know that they're definitely teaching a lot of that metacognition because they ask them these questions. Well, why did you do what you did? And why did you answer it in that way? And how did you work through the problem? So it's that really encouraging that process of how did you get to the answer that you got to. Strategies for helping with metacognition, things like asking open-ended questions, asking them how they got to that point. So it's not just responding for them, but giving them opportunities to reflect. Another big one is encouraging them to explain their perspective when they disagree. So that old, you're doing it because I said so, or it's no because I said no. Instead, encouraging them to share with you, like have them challenge you. You're telling me that you really want to do this, and you know that I really don't want you to do this. Convince me. Why do you think you should? And I might still say no at the end, but I'm really encouraging them to think about, well, what is it about that that you want me to hear from you? So my 8-year-old wants a cell phone. Like, you're not getting a cell phone at 8, but convince me. So he actually wrote out his step-by-step of why he thinks he deserves a cell phone. He did a pretty good job, still had to say no, but I was able to give him my reasons for why it wasn't a good idea. So we were able to have that conversation instead of just the no because I said so. So really encouraging them to think about why they think what they think. Also asking them questions to help understand their thought process. So how will you know when your drawing is finished? What will it be like when you're done? What will that look like? So asking those open-ended questions to really help understand their process, how they're thinking, what they're thinking, right? The last thing here is the self-monitoring. So this is kind of a step off of that metacognition. So not only are we thinking about what we're thinking, but we're able to monitor when we make mistakes, when we don't accomplish something, and then go back. It's that ability to be able to go back and fix it and do better next time by being able to monitor what we're doing right now. So that ability to be able to catch and correct errors. So with this one, I actually have my child review his own homework at the end. So I'll take a look at it, I'll see if he's made any errors, and then I'll ask him to go through. So instead of me telling him this one's wrong, can we look at it again? I'll ask him to look through it and catch his own mistakes so that we can kind of process that together. So in conclusion, executive functioning skills really involve being able to build our children's confidence, really helping them to encourage that building of their self-esteem so that they feel like they want to keep doing harder things and accomplishing more. Encouraging them to take challenges, even when they feel like things are hard, encouraging them to take that step. Encouraging that problem-solving development instead of solving the problems for them. That is so critical, especially at this age, so they feel capable. They feel like their brain is capable of helping them come up with a solution. Modeling good executive functioning skills. What does that look like? How do we teach them self-reflection, emotion control, organization? By letting them see what we do. So that's what I have for you today. I really appreciate your time and attention. If anybody would like to reach out to me, feel free to call or email. I'd be happy to talk to you about any questions that you have. And as I said, I'll make sure that you have a copy of my presentation so that you can have that to review. Thank you so much.
I'll give you my card, and if you email me, I'll send you copies of the presentation. And the presentation was also recorded today, so I'm happy you'll see that in your email.
So for those that are online, Doreen Babbitt said that you could reach out to her via email if you would like a copy of the presentation. You can also reach out to me by email if you'd like a copy, and the presentation itself will be posted online.
Does anybody have any last questions for Susie? So many strategies, so many tips, so many things that you can implement at home. I would just reiterate what Susie said, in that try them and don't expect success after one try. So just try to be consistent with whatever it is that you do implement. I know that you might have been going through this presentation and thinking, yeah, my child is struggling with this, struggling with this, struggling with this. So just either choose one thing at a time to address and work on that, and then tackle the next thing. And I think that with that, you will find that you can move your child along and progress. I also want to mention the zones of regulation, which Susie mentioned earlier. That is a program that is implemented in our K through 2 classes across the district for the most part. And we also have parent resources if you find that self-regulation is an issue for your child and monitoring emotions. We can share some of those materials with you. We might have to come back and do a zones of regulation workshop and focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah.
My son, yeah, a lot of things. I'm not going to try and foil the ocean on the first try, but I think that if you guys might with time, like, it's okay if I talk.
Sure. If you guys are good, you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to leave. That's up to you.
He's very visual, so I was kind of thinking, like, if there was a way to make, like, either a Velcro or some sort of chart, like, when I pick him up from school, I'm like, okay, you have, your activity, whether it's a sport or something, you've got homework, you've got reading, you have to eat dinner, like, all of these things, to just sort of, like, put it out and have him
So we had a question from the audience that her son's very visual, and she was asking about how do we set up that visual schedule and what does that look like. So I agree with you. I think Lakeshore, sometimes Amazon, but also I've also done my own, right? So you just buy the little Velcro, print out pictures from online, and then kind of that way you personalize it. Sometimes I've even used the child's picture, right? So I might take a picture of Lucas playing soccer and say, okay, you have soccer. Here's us eating dinner at our dinner table. So then it becomes even more personalized, so you can try using some of your own things. Or absolutely, I think Amazon has some great stuff, Lakeshore has some great stuff, or like the whole makeshift do-it-your-own can be helpful, so those are some places to look.
I did a morning routine and a bedtime routine with strategies, but they just get bored of this. So maybe I should try making it not spend money.
Yeah, because then if they get bored, you just switch it up again.
When my kids was younger, I tried there's a magnet, like whiteboard. So you can create your own, or they give you the magnet of all different type of activities and all the holidays, stuff like that. So you can put it into calendar, right now, or even daily, and then they can do some. And I think even more fun, if you want something visual, you can ask him to draw, like if you want to draw a soccer ball or something.
Oh, that's true.
So that will become visual, and when they do it their own, they memorize even more. And
Yeah,
they feel
I
very
agree.
involved.
I do have one question. Things like working memory. My son, when he was tested for dyslexia a number of years ago, he had really poor working memory. He's obviously a lot older now, but is that specifically as some of those executive function tasks like, is it like, are they kids with dyslexia like worse in those areas? Is that a thing?
So I think if you know that he struggles with working memory, you're right. I think working memory does play a part in a lot of different things. But what kids can do is learn strategies to help sustain or push through even those challenges. So if he knows that working memory is an area of concern for me, it's hard for me to keep things in my memory, then maybe he's going to get really good at making sure he writes things down. So that it's that added layer of reminder. I'm physically writing it, I know that I can see it, and it might be us teaching them some of those skills. So if I know that this is, so even as you're looking through this, you might start to kind of help your child really develop this area, and you're like, they're still struggling. Then how do we make sure to account for that by building up some of the other areas and teaching them little tricks to make sure that they can account for that even into adulthood. I know friends who can't for their life of them remember a name. They will never remember a phone number, right? So that working memory, making sure that they keep stuff in their working memory, they struggle with. So they're good about making sure I have to make sure that I write things down.